So Donald Stojack talks to very interesting people, and today we're going to talk with Tony out of Rochester, New York. And I've been tracking with Tony for a while, and he's got a very interesting story on how he got to where he is today. And I'm going to have him share a little bit about that. But as I've been working with a lot of businesses and coaches of different sizes and stripes, the thing is, how do we get something done, or how do we get things moving? And I've listened to some of Tony's stuff, and I think he's got some good ideas, and I just want him to kind of jump in and share that. And all of you have gotten good perspective from different people out there, but I want you to kind of have an open mind with what Tony's got to say. So Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's just rock and roll with this. Okay.
Yeah, rock and roll. That's a perfect, perfect
Yeah.
introduction.
And Tony and I are fellow musicians, so full
Yes.
disclosure, it's like,
Yeah.
what does Donald attract?
Matter of fact, I
Another
have a gig coming up tomorrow night with
Mhm.
one of the bands that I play in. So that's something. I was kind of the rock and roll PI, like PI meaning private investigator, but I also worked for the local county here where I live in Rochester, Monroe County, as an investigator. And that's what I was doing. And I don't know if you've ever heard that some people make a living and other people make a life. Well, what I was doing really, I was making a living. I was good at it. I mean, I enjoyed the job, but have you ever thought there's got to be something more, something better out there for you, something that's more aligned with your soul, that you're in a soul alignment with? And so long story short, in 2020, we were in the middle of chaos in the world. And that's kind of when I decided to start this business venture, Tony W Coaching. And I got into coaching. I know many of you are familiar with Evan Pagan, and I got into his coaching program and launched and haven't turned back. In February of 2021, I actually left my full-time investigator job. So what I like to say is I look for the truth, and I've always looked for the truth. And I look for the truth in cases that I worked on. I worked on an identity theft case. It was really interesting. The woman lived down in Florida, and she reported that her identity was stolen. Now, this all has a point. So what happened, and not just an interesting story from an interesting person, I guess, but I was assigned to work on the case, and we found that a woman here in Rochester had stolen her identity, had managed to get a hold of her birth certificate, social security card. And it's interesting, when you steal somebody's identity, you can memorize all the details about who they are, but you don't know who they are personally. So I called the theft or the thief into my office to interview her, and during the interview I started to ask a bunch of questions about who she was. And of course, she rattles off the date of birth, social security number, all that stuff, because she got that from the birth certificate. She even knew the woman's parents' names. So I thought that was pretty impressive because she did her homework. But then when I asked her the most important question, what are the names and dates of birth of your children? And she just looked, you saw all the color run out of her. And she's like, uh-oh, I am in trouble. So so at that point, we had the real woman whose identity was stolen on speakerphone. So I said, the reason you don't know that information is because you're not the real Mrs. So-and-so. I have the real one on the phone. And it was crazy. But the point is, though, the point that I'm getting to is the first step in doing anything is we have to know who we are. We have to know who our identity is, and we have to figure that out, because if we're going to find something that really resonates with ourselves, and we're going to find that career and be willing to take that action, our number one goal is to know who we are. What's the quote? Know thyself, or to thine own self be true. So that is kind of where I think everything starts with. And one of the things that I learned throughout the years is a formula that I call GPA. Now, GPA is something when we're in school, we try to get our grade point average, because whoever has the best grade point average will get college and the whole thing. So it's a different GPA. It's goal, purpose, action. And those are the three things that we really need in our life. We need to have a goal. We need to know what we want in our life, and not just a monetary goal, but a life goal. Where do we want to be? And write it down, because it wasn't until I started writing my goals down on paper that things started to happen for me. There's something magical about writing things down on paper. So you got to have your goal, but you have to have a purpose for everything. You have to know your why. There's a saying that says, if you know your why, the how will follow. Well, that's a little bit woo-woo, but I think we have to think about what the how is. We have to come up with strategies, because that's how we take action. But we have our goal. Now we find our why, we have our purpose, we have our reason for doing what we want to do. And one of the reasons that I got into what I am doing now is because, I wanted to help people. I want to impact lives of people. I want to make the world a better place. And what better way to do that than to coach people one-on-one, and to get up on stages and to talk about things just like this, how important that is. So purpose, and the last thing is action. And as another mentor of mine, Tony Robbins, says, take massive action. And that's true. We need to take action, because a lot of us put off taking the actions that we need to take. So a great book that helped me was a Brian Tracy book. Who's read it? Eat That Frog, or Eat the Frog. Do the thing that you dread the most first thing in the morning, get it out of the way, and that'll start your day on a great path.
So it's kind of interesting, Tony, as I work with people, things oftentimes, people reach out to us because something's not working, right? Or even our own business, something's not working, and we can't. Anybody been there? It's like something's not working. Okay. And I think it's the ability to kind of unpack it in an orderly fashion. Looking in the mirror in the morning, each of us, even though we think we've got it together, right? We've all got to admit, at each and every moment, at every level of business, something's not working. And so I think it's good to have these kind of things that we can hold on to and resonate in our brains to take an honest look at ourselves. But then again, the more you can help yourself or be helped, right? The more you can help others.
That is very true. It all goes down to the secret of living is giving. And the more we give, the more we get back. And I have really found that to be true, because when I walk into the world with an attitude that, I'm going to show the world my best self. Now, am I always like that? Oh, no. Many of my friends in my life will be able to tell you moments when I've been, awful cranky, especially before I have that cup of coffee in the morning. But if we go around the world looking at, how can we help people? And, a lot of people in the coaching world, they're struggling to get clients. And it wasn't until I started looking at how can I give more versus how can I get more. When I changed that mindset, everything just kind of flipped. So that is something to really think about. We have to be fulfilled, because success without true fulfillment is really failure, if you think about it. Because how many people are walking around with what you would think would be a successful life, and you find out that they're not really happy because they're not being fulfilled. So again, that all goes back to finding out what our passion is and letting that drive us. I started a podcast back in 2020, in October 2020. And I started this podcast because I'm sitting on social media. Now, let's go back in time and remember 2020 and what that was like, especially those who live here in the US. We had all the lockdowns going on all over the world. People were, they didn't know what was going to happen with the economy was starting to grumble a little bit. We had this presidential election, and people were arguing with each other, and especially on social media. And I'm saying there's so much negativity in the world. We got to have more positive content in the world. And then that's when I heard the little voice inside my head that said, that's your job. So when I was in high school, I used to do some DJ work, and later in life, I DJ'd at clubs and weddings and things like that. So I'd always been thinking about starting a podcast. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I started Strive to Thrive, the purposely positive podcast, all about spreading positive content into the world. And through the podcast, I've met, as Donald talks to interesting people, I've met the most interesting and amazing people in doing that. And it's just been a great part of my mission alongside of the coaching and speaking to help people with changing those ways of thinking, building momentum, eliminating self-sabotage, or yeah, I can't talk today. Here I'm a speaker and a podcaster, and I can't talk. But discovering the driving force that helps us take action and eliminating our self-sabotage moments, because when we eliminate those things, that helps to create momentum.
Could we unpack that a bit? And that comes down to the big D word, the desire word.
Yes.
And, I think it's interesting, and I know you got a formula for that, Tony, but
Yes.
At the end of the day, you touched on the goal setting and stuff. And I think we've all taken the courses, we've all worked with some of the masters out there on this. But at the end of the day, if you don't want it bad enough, you ain't going to get it. And so creating that burning desire that you got to have it no matter, Tony's Robin, you mentioned Tony Robbins, like it is UPW, and was that on Friday night? They do the walking on the coals. Anybody may have done that? It's like, really, you got to want it so bad that you're going to put your bare foot on those hot coals. And don't try this in your backyard. So full disclosure, don't try this on your own. But how do you want it? How do you get to that spot where you want it so bad and it's so ingrained? It's like no matter what, no matter what obstacle happens out there, whatever gets in your way, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect analogy. And by the way, on your camping trip, I don't want to hear any walking across burning coals.
Not going to be any of that stuff.
No matter how bad you want it. But
Mm-hmm.
really, it's the 3D formula, and that's what I call it. It starts with desire, because that's what everything starts with. We have to want something. And just like you said, we have to want something so bad. Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, one of the great books. But here's the thing about Think and Grow Rich. I know a lot of people that have read that book and they say, oh yeah, that was a great book, but it really didn't help me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, how many books out there are about how to get rich, how to lose weight, and how to find your ideal partner? So how come we don't see a lot of very wealthy, skinny people walking around hopelessly in love? It's because they haven't crossed the line between information and inspiration.
How do we get there?
That's the big question. We have to want it bad enough. We have to get up to the point where every day we are so tired of the way things are that we want to change, and we have to commit ourselves that no matter what happens, no matter what difficulty we go through, that desire is strong enough. We have to make a decision, which is the second D. Desire, decision. Make a decision. Everything in your life starts with a decision. The decision to join this group was a decision you all made, and great value here. Great bunch of people. I missed a few of these, and I felt bad because I wanted to be here with you guys, and watching on the YouTube video is great, but making a decision that no matter what happens, no matter what difficulties, because why businesses fail? Donald can tell you that. Most businesses fail because people give up. They make the decision to quit because, going back to desire, the desire wasn't strong enough. So we have to have.
Is it ever easy?
Oh, it's never easy.
And so if you're waiting for it to be easy, or you're looking, it's interesting, Tony, talking to people, I think some people are looking for that magic formula or that magic sales funnel or those magic words, or, it's like Jack and the Beanstalk. Just give me the beans, right? You ever,
Mhm.
just give me the beans, right?
Mhm.
And that ain't it. And so if
Mhm.
you're looking for that, you're going to be with the 99 and 9/10% of the people out there that don't make it. If you're
Right.
waiting for the magic beans. And so partly, I think what Tony, you're talking about is having it so bad that when other people stop, you keep going. And so the difference between maybe the typical person and us who are more of an entrepreneur brain,
Right.
when everybody clocks out at 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, 7. Richard was emailing me last night at 11 o'clock at night. We're still going, right? And silly me, I let his email come into my inbox that late at night and ping me. And so, but I got up early this morning and answered his email, right? And like, when do I fit that in? Well, let me get up a little bit earlier. Let me stay up a little bit later. Let me walk a little faster. Let me stretch my credit limit a little farther. Let me push my limit, my endurance a little bit ahead of where I think it can go. Is that what we're talking about here?
That is spot on. That's exactly what we're talking about. Go more, do more than everybody else. Because in any career, if you do more than anybody else, you will eventually get ahead. You will eventually move up that ladder faster. But when it comes to your own businesses, you have to be willing to do more for your customers, for your clients, for the people around you, for the people that work for you. You have to be able to give that back, and you have to want it bad enough. You have to want success so bad that you will make those sacrifices in order to get there. And that's why the strong why is so important. Why do you want it? What is your purpose? What is the reason that you want to get it? If your strong why is, well, I just want to make a lot of money, it's not going to do it. It's not going to cut it. Why do you want to make enough money? It's like somebody who wants to make a change in their health. Why do they want to make a change in their health? Well, I could use to lose a few pounds. Well, if the reason is because, you know what, I've got, a daughter who's 10 years old, and, I want to be able to walk down the aisle at her wedding. That's a strong why. That'll motivate you.
And so behind that, like when you unpack that, it's that time factor. And I think for all of us, like in our own motivation, or as we're looking for a potential client we're going to engage with, or a current client, it's finding those, I think it's those time factors, because that's what you can't undo, right? Jim Rohn said it. What did he say? I can make more money, but I can't make more time. Okay, so for each of us inside of ourselves, I know I feel it myself. I hit 64 there. It's like, okay, time, right? But my granddaughter is going to be 10 months old here momentarily, right? And that time factor, because there's certain things I want to have in place for her and future grandchildren, obviously. There better be some more grandkids coming. We're going to have a talk, right? But it's, it's knowing I got to have this done. I mean, like currently, just Tony, as an example, I put in a new yard last year, right? And things had to happen because we did a major redo in the house, and in the process of that got a new drain field, but everything got torn up. So, but rather than just letting it be rocks and gravel again, I thought, I got a granddaughter coming here. I want her to have green lawn to play on, right? And this summer is going to be her first, probably steps are going to be taken, right? And I am determined to have a lush green lawn. Does that make sense? And so it's like, find that time factor in everything inside of yourself, right? Tyler's on this call. He's got some younger, he's got a kid that's flown the coop now, but he's got some younger kids, and they just got back from Disneyland. And so Carly, pay attention, right? She wants to get her kids to Disneyland. It's like, it's now, right? It's like your kids aren't going to enjoy Disneyland when they're 30, like they're going to enjoy it when they're, in that age, that magical age range, right? And as adults, we'll enjoy, I'll guarantee you'll enjoy Disneyland a lot more when you take your kids there and you see it through their eyes. And so it's that time is now, right? And you got to know when that time is there.
I love that. And how you brought up determination, by the way, because that's the last D. It's the 3D method: desire, decision, and then a determination that you're going to get there. And that whole idea of the Disneyland trip. So let's unpack that a little bit. We'll back up. So let's say, well, I need to be able to take my kids to Disneyland. I want to be able to do that by
Well, they're
maybe
still kids.
yeah.
Right?
What was that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, while they're still kids. So maybe within the next year. So you want to put down a date and then reverse engineer it, figure out, okay, how much money is this trip going to cost? And what is one thing that I can do every single day so that I can start putting away this type of, or this amount of money each day, so that when the time comes, I'm able to make that trip. That's having a goal. That's having something that will motivate you. That's a goal that has a purpose, and it'll help you to take action, going back to GPA. But the desire is, again, it starts with desire, the decision to start doing things, and then the determination to keep going no matter what happens.
And
Another,
that determination, Tony, I think is huge. You know, Craig and I both work obviously with Chet Holmes, and his book is The Ultimate Sales Machine.
Mhm.
But the title that I think he wanted to put on it, if I remember right, was Pig-Headed Discipline. And he always talked about that PhD, that pig-headed discipline is core and crucial, you know, to that movement profoundly. But that discipline is that determination, discipline to just drive it to the end.
Yeah.
How many people make it to black belt that start out? I think it's like 1 in 10,000.
Yeah, same thing with people that read a lot of the books. You know, most people will buy a great self-help book, and how many people, I think it's like maybe, I think it's 90% don't even read the book. They buy it, they have good intentions, and we all do that. We start out with good intentions. We make the decision, but we don't have the determination to carry it on. And it goes back because our desire in the beginning wasn't strong enough. So we just need to go forward, and we need to be willing to take those, and I'll throw another D word at you for a bonus, take those detours. When the GPS says recalculating route, we have to be willing to take the detour in order to get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you're working with somebody, you know, and you're kind of unpacking this with them,
Mhm.
are there any tactical things that you kind of get underneath their skin with, or inside their brain faster?
Yeah, I like to well, I like to randomly message people during the week, you know, so that they don't have to wait till they get back to their next session. You know, I'm going to be saying, hey, how'd it go with such and such a thing? You know, you said you were going to do this on Tuesday. Just checking to see how it was going, because they know that I'm going to be following up with them, and they don't want to come back and say, oh, I didn't get a chance to do it. So I think the whole accountability factor, I mean, that's huge. And until I started using that to my advantage for myself, and then learned how to use it better for my clients, that changed everything. A practical thing that I just like to do, and it's real simple, is I call the 3x5 card. Now everybody does everything now, you know, on their phones, on their computers. But you know what? I like putting pen to paper. So you get a 3x5 card, and first thing you do is, before you go to bed at night, write down 3 things that you're grateful for, no matter what, whatever your first impression, whatever comes into your mind, whether it's just the fact that here in Rochester, we actually have sunshine today. It's a rarity. I'm grateful for that. I was grateful that I got to take a walk. Simple things like that. 3 things you're grateful for. But the important thing is on the other side. Flip the other side now and write down 3 to 5 things that you need to get done. And I'm not talking, you know, run to the grocery store, you know, or do these mundane chores that we have to do. I'm talking about, what can I do that will help me to reach the goal that I'm trying to achieve faster? What can I do? What can I do in that moment of determination that can build my business, that can get those new clients, that can take me to where I want to be in 6 months or a year? What are those things? The most important thing you put down first. Maybe after you write down 3 things, you'll figure out number 2 is most important. We'll put a star by that. And the very next day, what you want to do is, in the morning, 2 things: pick up the card Read the things that you're grateful for, because it'll put you in the right mood. When you're in gratitude, it's hard to be anxious. It's hard to be worried. It's hard to be upset when you're grateful. So then you flip the card over. Okay, this is what I have to do today. And you start with that card and bam, before you even check email in the morning, before you check your phone, start working on those things. Become so determined that those are the things that you're going to get done by the end of the day. And you know what? If you don't get them done, don't beat yourself up over it. If you have 5 things on the list and you only get 3 done, then guess what you're going to do the next day? On your next day's card, you're going to write down those next 2 things. And then what I do is I save my cards with the little date on it, put it in an index box, so that every now and then you can pick those things up. You can check your progress, see how you're doing.
So you're saying before you can be on the outside, you have to be on the inside?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to put it. You have to be there internally. You have to go there first.
Mhm. It's was in a room a while back, and somebody came up to me and they wanted to know what I was doing. And they says, well, I don't know how they said it to me. It's like, what are you doing? And I had to think there for a moment. What I was doing in that room at that moment is on the inside I was being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And so there wasn't anything exterior I was doing. I was interior being. And because I was interior being, they walked up to me and says, what are you doing? Think about that for a moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, if you can't get that here, it ain't gonna ever be here.
Yeah, it has to start inside first.
If the energy ain't flowing inside, so figure that out.
Mhm.
And ultimately, it comes back to where we started this conversations, Tony. It is that desire, because if your desire is strong enough, if you've truly found that core desire, if you guys have got there, great, right? Hold on to it and don't let it go. If you're not quite there, noodle around for it or reach out for some help to get it. Because when your desire is that strong, it doesn't, I'm an introvert, right? Coming into a room, I don't get energized by going into crowds. I get drained. So I have to work extra hard to be there and be in it, right? But because my desire is so strong, I can do it. If my desire wasn't anchored and nailed to the floor, ain't gonna happen.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. But you're exactly right, Donald. It's got to be inside first, and you have to feel it, and you have to truly want it. And that's when your internal emotions will move and become part of your external. Just like it's deciding what you really want. Do you want better relationships? Do you want more energy? Do you want enthusiasm for your life? Do you want more money? Do you want to achieve that financial success, as they say, or financial independence? You have to be willing to let go of the fears and doubts that you have, because they're going to creep in. That's the internal part, right? I mean, I know it. I've done it. We've all done it, right? Well, who am I to want to do this or get that or achieve that?
Any questions from any of you on this stuff? I hopefully this is a review for you guys, but I want to cement it. And I knew as I've listened to Tony and I've listened to him kind of go through this, I says, right, that's very defined. And I wanted to kind of share that with you all here. Any questions, comments, anything you want to add to that or go deeper on? Yeah, Richard.
Right. Yes. Thank you for telling me kind of your methods and how you think. One thing that's missing is you said over and over, you have to want it. So how does that work? Let's break that down. How do you get to the point where you want it? I mean, you just grimace and jump at it, or is there some routine? You meditate, you make a vision board, how do you get to that point?
Well, I think for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different, because we're all different people here. We're all unique. So when we say, we want it, well, so let's pick on something random. So does somebody want to offer something maybe that they could say that this is what I want? I'd like
Well,
to-
what I can tell you and Donald knows this, what I want is to sit down every day and work at LinkedIn and work at it and work at it and work at it. I want to get those connections. I want to find people. I want to make those connections Donald talks about. I really enjoy it once I connect with somebody, getting to the point where they want to connect with me.
Mhm.
That's my challenge in life.
Okay. So your want is interesting because your want is very specific, and it's not it's more of a micro want.
Yeah,
is what
right.
it-
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a macro. It's not a big thing, but you have to, I guess, pick that apart. So why is that important to you?
You want
And
me to
what
try to
does
answer that?
What does that get for you when you're sitting down on LinkedIn making these connections?
One step up to the big picture.
Whatever, first impression for you.
I'm a semi-retired architect. I still do
Okay.
architecture, and there's risks involved with that, and there's downsides. It's a lot of fun, and I make some money, but escaping that climate of risk, and well, it's a constant climate of risk. You put something on paper, and everybody knows it if it's wrong. Escaping that way of living and getting to the point where it's just you're sort of having a good time dealing with people every day, and it's more of a flow in life than living in such a detailed way. And the purpose for that is, again, I'm semi-retired and there's only so much money coming in. So to regain the lifestyle I had once a long time ago when I was a full income person, I need to make this work. I need to get to a better place in life where there's more fun things in life.
And why is that important? Why is getting those fun things in life important to you, Richard?
It's similar to Donald. I am now turning 68. The clock is ticking, baby. There's some things that need to get done,
Mhm.
There's some travel, there's some I'll give you an example. I love my car. It's a BMW, but it has 340,000 miles on it. It'd be real nice to do something different there.
Mhm.
So
So
it's
those things that you want to have, that you want to have, like you talked about with that car, and those are really what's going to propel you to want to sit down and spend that time on LinkedIn every day.
yes, but I know you're going to ask me what's the bigger why, aren't you?
I was thinking about it.
Oh,
Well, here's the thing, and think about this. I don't know if you're a fan of the Beatles, but Donald said he was going to be 64, and Paul McCartney wrote a song called "When I'm
yeah, right,
64." He's
right.
80 now, so when he sings "When I'm 64," he's reminiscing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, one of the things I don't want to spend up all the time self-disclosing Richard here, but you see all those books behind
Go for
me.
it.
One of my great loves is I'm not somebody who doesn't read a book. I've read them all cover to cover. I take great joy in learning all that stuff. And a bigger why would be to share that with people, to really, one of my favorite words is credulous. Credulous is someone who believes everything easily and doesn't check it out. I, I'd like to share kind of what I've discovered, that kind of the scientific truth of how the brain works and how everything works in business and creativity. So that's kind of the big why, is that love for discovering the truth and sharing it.
discovering the truth and sharing it. So, I mean, write that down, put that right in front of you every day. Discover the truth and share it. And then when you're out there on the computer, and when you get tempted to say, I need to take a break, I'm going to go binge watch Netflix or something, you're going to read that card, and you're going to maybe see some of those pictures. That's one of the beauties of vision boarding, is seeing those things that we actually want to achieve, and knowing our why while we're doing our work, seeing that in front of us in our office, and having like a little card with those words on it. Maybe that'll be what you need to remind you to keep going and to really
Well,
want to do it. and to really
Yeah,
want
thank you for
that back.
pushing me a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to eat up everybody's time, but thank you. That was good.
Mhm.
That was, I like that.
Hey, Donald, can I chime in here?
Please,
Because
yes.
it came to my mind when you were talking about someone came up to you and why are you here? And you said, well, I'm being, right?
Mhm.
And it reminded me of one of my early mentors in this like 25 years ago. And when I was, transitioning from being a contractor into the sales world. And we did a workshop and he talked about how they focus on what they, what they want a lot, right?
Mhm.
But they have a hard time ever attaining what they want. And his workshop was about, well, his position was because people think, well, if I focus on what I want, and see, I got to get this correct. I had it a moment ago. And then I can, it's be, do, have. Oh, it's actually, they focus on what they have to do. That's the thing. If I be, be, have, want, be, want, have. No, be, have, want, have, be, to. How is that? Oh man. Anyway, the whole, I got it. I had it a moment ago and I lost it for some reason. But it's the 3 steps of attainment to becoming who you want to be. And his position was most people have it reversed. And his training was be the person you want to be. Oh, it's be, do, have. That's it. Be, do, have instead of have and do and be. Okay. So what I want, so if I only get that, so now I have it, right? Okay. Then I can do the things I want to do. And then I can be the person I want to become. That's the standard mindset for lots of people, right? If I only had this, then I could be that.
Mhm.
And his whole position was just, start at be the
Mhm.
person who you want to be. Like you were saying, you're in the room, I'm being. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
focused on what I want or what I have to become. I'm just being. So
It's interesting in my early training when I was in the conservatory, they would take us out on the stage in the big auditorium on the big Steinway 9-footer, and all the lights were off. And we didn't know if there was an audience out there or not. So every time we went onto that stage, we were being.
yeah.
And then one day they turned the lights up and there were people in the audience. That's how we did it. Or I remember in my sales training, because we were talking with higher and higher tier people all the time, I had to visualize sitting here in this room, being in the top office of a tall skyscraper. I wasn't sitting in my basement office on the backside of my garage. Mentally, I was in a tall office building looking out, right? Whatever that big office building, whether the Empire State Building or that big one in the Transamerica Building in San Francisco. Be there already. If you're going to go to
Yes.
Disneyland, in your mind, be walking through the front gates of Disneyland already with your kids in hand. Be there.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah. And that's a really, really good analogy there. It's like you're literally in your basement room in the back of your garage, talking to high level executives all over the planet, mostly, in North America.
Yep.
Okay. And you have to be the person that they, at that moment, every time you're on the phone, you have to be the person that they're going to want to engage with.
Yeah.
You can't come there with a want and a have.
No.
You have to come there with being something that they want and have. Or someone.
And so, Richard, to the point too, as you're noodling this around in front of it for all of us, and like Tony talked at the beginning, like write it down, write something down, write a goal down. Okay. Now, if that ain't working, find a different goal. You see, if you have a goal, you're more likely to achieve something, right? But if you write down the goal, you're more likely to achieve the goal. But now, if you guys are writing down the goal and it ain't happening, that's probably evidence you got the wrong goal in front of you. You think that's the goal. Does that make sense? So if you've got a goal and it ain't working, you might have the wrong goal in front of you. You thought that was it. So everything's a test, right? I did a few projects with Jay Abraham. He would just say over and over again, we're testing, right? We're going to test. We're going to test fast and hard on stuff. Okay. So if your goal ain't working, test another goal, try something else, right? It's something else. And so Richard, maybe getting another car is not it. You think it's it. It might be. Try that. If that doesn't motivate you, try something else. Now, don't just flip from one thing to the other every other day. So, well, it didn't happen for a day. No, remember, as entrepreneurs, we're gonna drive it. So give it some time. But if you're stepping back and it's been 6 months, it ain't working, step back and go, I might have the wrong goal in front of me. Right? It ain't motivating me enough to that point.
Yeah, that's good. It speaks to finding something that really, what do I want to say, hit you in the gut, or really kind of spins you up, rather than, yeah, right, I need a car. That's not a strong emotional motivation at all.
And sometimes we make the mistake of choosing the goal that we think other people would find acceptable, or the goal that other people would view as it, but it's really not for us. And that makes sense. It's almost an exterior goal as opposed to an interior goal. Anybody had that realization at some point? I had the wrong goal. I was pleasing the wrong person, right? You know, you get on an airplane, do they tell you to put on everybody else's oxygen mask around you first before you put on your own? No, put your own oxygen mask on. Thank you, Craig. Jean-Luc. Or Digi. Let's do Jean-Luc first.
Hey, how's it going? So Tony, I really like your talk there. It's pretty much aligned with what I teach and stuff, but I like to hear from somebody else that's thinking the same way. I love it. And I'd like to connect with you. I lost my internet. I was panicking, so I had to go on my phone. The internet came back. Talk about panic mode when you lose internet. Jeez, we're so addicted. But little comment, Donald, about fire walking. I did that a few weeks ago.
Oh,
it's unbelievable, because there's no rhyme or reason how you can do this. But it's a 3-hour prep. Like, you have to light the fire as a group, and then you go do some stuff. But my friend is Cree, and he was a fire keeper. So it's 8 feet long. And some people say, well, it might be water under, because on the grass, you have to walk bare feet on the grass first to get there. But when I got there, my buddy looked at me, and there's some dark spot after a couple of people go. So he came and put brand new red coal for 8 feet.
oh gosh.
Kind of panicked for a second, but you kind of prep, and then you walk normal. So you do quite a few, and nothing on my feet. How do you explain this? I don't. But if you have a chance to do it with the proper people.
With the proper people.
Yes, you have to make sure they're fire walkers. They're great people, because you get prepped mentally, which you can't explain. Nobody can explain how you do it, but great. And I love, Tony. I'd love to oh, I see your thing is back. We'll do a connect there. Thanks. Donald.
Yeah, excellent. DG, we it wouldn't be a day without a question from Digi in Nigeria. You got to come off mute, my friend.
Yeah. Hi, Donald. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Tony, thanks for the 3Ds, the desire, the dedication, and determination. Okay, my question is, how do you make someone turn their need into a want?
Good question. Again, it all
I'm sorry,
it
you
all
get that?
comes up.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. It all stems from, just like we were talking about, having the big enough why, having a big enough reason to want to do something. And if our why isn't big enough, then our and forgive this pun, I stole it from TR, and that's you'll be having a should instead of a must, so you'll should all over yourself, but it's a great metaphor. It's a great analogy, because if our why isn't big enough, or why isn't strong enough, we have to be willing to step back and make changes, and say, okay, well, what is a big enough why? Or dig deeper, go deeper in your why. Okay, well, I want to make money because I want to have financial independence. Well, why do you want to have financial independence? Well, I want financial because I don't want to suffer like my parents did. Well, why don't you want to do that? Well, because I want to be able to pass something down to my children. Then why is that important? And keep asking yourself, why is that important? And eventually you're going to feel an emotional rush about something. And that's when you're going to realize that that is the why that will make you fly. You'll be able to soar once you narrow that down. It's just so vital. And I want to touch a little bit on what Craig said, because it was really important, and we kind of went by it quickly. But be the person that you have to be in order to achieve the goals that you want. You have to be that person. You have to sit down, be willing to list out what qualities does a person who is, let's just say, financially independent, what qualities that person have to have? Well, when you write those down, then learn how to embody those qualities each and every day, and then start acting as if you are that person. Because what would the future Tony do? What would the future DG do? What would the future Richard or future Craig or future Donald or Carly or any Jean-Luc, what would the future person do? And that's where it'll stem from. That'll give you the motivation when things are hard and when you don't want to do something, when you don't want to reach out to these people, when you're tired of getting the no's. You'll be willing to take that further step because your desire, your why is strong enough. Your determination is there. And you've made that decision that no matter what happens, I'm going to go for it. And I also want you to pay attention to one more thing, and that is the divine appointments in your life. Because I think we all have divine appointments in our life. I'm in this group because of a divine appointment that happened many years ago, before I even thought about being in a business, when I went through a divorce. And I was sitting down talking to a friend, and we were just talking about how crappy the dating world was, especially for guys that were had been married for several years and were new to it. And so I was giving my friend some dating advice because I'm usually the guy everyone came to for advice. So he told me about this guy that he discovered by the name of David D'Angelo. And he said, you'd love this guy because he digs really deep into psychology. And I was a big psychology geek anyway. So I said, oh, so he gave me one of his DVDs he loaned it to me. And I sat and watched it. And I go, that guy is pretty sharp. And that's how I was introduced to the guy that him as, Eben Pagan. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had gotten introduced to Eben and been following him for a while, that I wouldn't have changed my life completely. I wouldn't have become a coach, and I wouldn't be here with you wonderful people today and met people like all of you, and Donald included. So pay attention to the divine appointments, because you never know where those people that you meet, that person that you talk to in the coffee shop, where that's going to lead you to.
Great. And we are out of time officially, so I'm going to end the recording here. Thank you very much, Tony.